Okay.
Okay, so can we start?
Fine with
Good.
me, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome to everybody. I'm happy that we can give this webinar this afternoon about the results of the Family Share project. And I thank very much Agnes Hubert, who will be should be in charge of managing the whole discussion after a brief presentation on the Family Share project. So today we are speaking about, in particular, on innovating and rethinking local childcare through co-creation. But let me just emphasize a little bit the objectives of the whole project. So what Family Share is basically is an innovative model of time sharing for childcare which is based on volunteering, self-management, and mutual help from parents. So the basic idea of this project is to activate small networks of parents sharing their time and their capabilities in order to provide an alternative um, offer for childcare to the one that possibly is not so powerfully offered by the local institutions. And the family share approach is so it's a methodology of creating self-supporting parents supported by an online platform, an app, an Android and iOS app that is intended to facilitate all the logistic aspects of this time sharing approach. And at the root of this approach is the creation of small networks that are circle of trust among parents that might very well support a work-life balance, which is one of the main problems, not only pre-COVID, but also in particular in the new situation that occurs right now. So this project has a number of different partners around Europe. In particular, we made experimental evaluation of this approach in different CityLabs, in Kortrijk, in Győr, in Thessaloniki, in Venice, in Bologna, in different social environments, while in Trento we experimented this approach inside of a company welfare approach, inside of a research center at BK that has more than 1,000 people working in, experimenting the same approach, not in a social context, but in a company context. And then we have other partners like IMEC supporting us the impact evaluation of the project, VLabs supporting us in the development of the app and in the dissemination aspects. Okay, the project involved directly in the experimental part a lot of people. Basically, it was developed under two pilot phases, one smaller in 2019 and one larger in 2020, mostly affected by the COVID pandemic, of course. But anyway, we were able to reach about more than 1,000 parents engaged in events, meetings, and networking activities. We planned and we ruled out almost 1,000 activities, and the platform, the web, the app has right now more than 1,300 registered users. So that is just to say that we really had the opportunity to not just co-create the model and the app, but also to experiment it with a large number of people. You can go to the next slide, Marta. Yes, and this is just to show you the how the number grows starting from the first pilot to the second pilot in different CityLabs. And in the next slide, what we can see is that the same holds for the usage of the app. Well, you can see that in the first period of the project, we basically designed the app, and then starting from February of this year, basically we started having larger numbers, in particular in the most in the biggest parents group like Kursic and Vola. What is important is that we made also an app evaluation with respect to a number of different parameters like the easy of use, the perceived usefulness, and but also on the intention to use and the attitude toward using. And we are quite happy because anyway we were able to reach good numbers, in particular with respect to the perceived usefulness of the app. There is still some place of improvement with respect to the easy of use, where we are about 80% of people that basically agree on the usability of the app. But what's important is that almost 95% of people that were asked to evaluate the app said that this app covers something that is not covered neither by WhatsApp nor by other social networks nor by tools like Doodle that are just aimed at generic instruments for facilitating the decision about time, date, and activity. Let's go to the next slide, where we can see that we were somehow successful also in involving not just the mothers, but also fathers. And we can see that the more the app and the model is used, the more also fathers are involved. We passed from 11% in the first pilot to 25% to the second pilot. In particular, we found out that fathers involved directly in the activities, in these time-sharing childcare activities, really were happy about that, and they expressed the voice also to other fathers. Okay, the main results of this project are two. The first result, which is left after the end of the project, to everybody that wants to continue in that direction, is a family share app, which is co-designed and co-created in a way that it may scale up easily. And the second result, next slide, is a toolkit. It's a bag which will be available at that URL by the end of this month, that contains not just the technical direction to install the app, but in particular all the guidelines that we collected at the end of our project in order to create this small network of parents, as well as videos, interviews that make easy to any association or public administration that wants to replicate in other contexts this same approach that can benefit from it in order to start the activity without much need of training. And this toolkit has been prepared in different languages, also to facilitate the spread of this approach around you. And that's it. Thanks for your attention. I give the floor to Agnes Aubert, and I really thank all the participants to this webinar, asking everybody to be reactive, to make this opportunity really an opportunity to share information and experience, and also in order also to foresee how we can really keep the work done alive after the end of the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Cortesi. It was a real sort of joy to sort of hear you. I want, first of all, to extend my congratulations to you, to Maria Sangilano, and to all the team which has been sort of leading this project, because I mean, I see as well the progress in 1 year, because I was in Bologna a year ago with you in a very inspiring session. And I mean, I see the progress, particularly in the engagement of fathers, which you were sort of fairly sort of pessimistic about a year ago in, I mean, different places with different sort of specificities. But I mean, now you've really made a real sort of breakthrough, which is really good. I see the engagement of parents is certainly a sort of a proof of the success of your project as well, and we'll probably hear from Maria why in May 2020, I mean, in Venice, the engagement became sort of amazingly shot up suddenly. I mean, is that a good side of COVID? I wonder. We'll have an opportunity to talk about it. Anyway, I don't want to take too much time, just to sort of introduce myself briefly. I've been working for the European Commission for 30 years, and then I'm now teaching at the College of Europe, and I've got a feminist think tank called Gender 5+. So I'm really more on the sort of gender expert, but obviously work-life balance and family welfare is really one of the important issue in gender equality. So I will try and sort of moderate this session despite sort of sometimes difficult technical conditions on the webinar. We'll have a first session up to 3:45, as you've seen on the program. And we've got 3 major presentations plus 3 little pitches, and then we'll have a Q&A discussion. Please put forward your questions for the Q&A as soon as you want on the chat. Okay, and now I'm going to give the floor first of all to Lucy Stevens and Luciana Talpo. It is extremely important to be able to compare. I mean, there is already a number of partners within the Family Share project, but comparing the experience of parents-led family care organizations in the UK seems to be particularly important, as for specific reasons in the UK has really been very leading on this field. So Lucy from the New Economics Foundation, and from Grasshopper, please, you have the floor.
Agnes,
I don't see Lucy and Luciana.
In fact, they are not connected yet. Unfortunately, we are not sure.
Okay, so can we start with you, Maria?
Yes, I was.
We go straight away to you. Okay. So Maria Sangilano, one of the leaders of the project, we must sort of start feeling a little bit more relaxed now that it's finishing. But so who's going to sort of give us an evaluation of the overall piloting experience of the project?
Exactly.
Maria.
Thank you, Agnes. Can you all see my screen? It should work. So as Agnes was mentioning, my presentation will provide you with an overview of the evaluation for the entire piloting experience, because with Smart Venice, one of the partners of the project, we were in charge of both managing the Venice City Lab, and therefore the piloting practices in Venice, but also evaluating the entire piloting activities from all the partners and coordinating them. So just to recap on what Agostino Cortesi has already presented, and to start modeling what we did. We practiced a social innovation model mixed with digital innovation based on shared childcare, with an active role played by parents in this, how we did it. Basically, parents were working in small groups, 12 to 15 adults and 10 to 15 children. These groups were formed starting from individual contacts at the neighborhood and school levels, and at the company levels as well. We basically identified two main shared childcare or co-playing, as we also named it, models. One model, which was more prominent during the first piloting year of the project, was the so-called entirely self-organized model. Basically, relying on time sharing among parents in a way that the volunteer childcare provided by parents themselves was covering all the needed schedules in the activity, and a mixed model. In mixed models, which also varied, but in different ways. But in this model, parents are occasionally supported by professional educators who are actually guaranteeing a continuity of the activity, or the parents provide creative roles instead. The pilot in family share were mostly organized either at workspaces with the so-called family share at work practice, which was implemented in Trento by FBK and in Belgium by our partner Destuveret, which was the subject of the previous webinar last week. And also on the other side, and this will be the focus today, co-playing and child sharing, childcare activities were taking place in schools, in kindergartens, play centers, and other public spaces. We identified a few common features across all the CityLabs. Basically, what was really important was partnership with local stakeholders, and therefore cities, schools, NGOs, cooperatives, and companies, and also the constant support that the project partners and community managers, or as community managers, were providing to the groups of parents engaged in the activities, and which was consisting of matchmaking, informative support, but also setting up insurance policies, providing with toolkits and advice on how to lead childcare activities. All the CityLabs went through an entire cycle of preparatory and then rollout activities for both years in 2019 and then 2020. And the type of activities that were organized were both summer or winter weeks or weekends, or shorter after-school labs. And as it was said, the digital component of the project was based on a mobile app, which was used as a planning tool to organize the schedules. The evaluation that we conducted was aimed at identifying trends in the digital and social innovation practices, and monitoring and aligning and coordinating across the CityLabs. We used to have monthly calls, monitoring templates to share the experiences in the 6 cities, but then also we relied on interviews and focus groups with participating parents, and analyzed the results both after the first year of rollout and after the second, really to better understand which trends were emerging and which dynamics. And the results were presented in a public deliverable that was released in 2 versions and will be also made available. What we learned. So the next few slides are really about the learnings and the findings of our evaluation. First of all, it's worth highlighting that the COVID and pandemic and post-pandemic situation really heavily impacted on what we did, especially in 2020, obviously. It's really clear that the lockdown had quite disruptive effects on families' well-being. All our CityLabs tried to adapt the shared childcare solutions of the project to online settings, but also in other ways, in smaller groups, like it happened in Kortrijk. The idea was really to try to make available to parents some tools and opportunities to better cope with the stress from the emergency situation. Of course, there were several hurdles emerging also after the lockdown, when the summer camps and summer activities were organized in 2020, because families felt in a way less ready to join group activities in general, for many different understandable reasons. But overall, what we experienced was really a high degree of resilience from all the CityLabs, being able to tailor activities to the new regulations and the new protocols for safety and health measures, which was really effortful, I would say. And the second pilot also took place under quite stressing conditions. That's quite clear. So another important learning point that it's worth highlighting is the trust element. Obviously, to be able to take the lead into a childcare activity involving a group of children which are not your children, parents needed to trust themselves as educators, quote unquote, and trust other parents, whom they not always were already in touch with beforehand, right? So what we learned and experienced was that in family share, the so-called mixed models emerged as the most implemented ones across the CityLabs during the second pilot, actually, with the Belgian exception, as you will learn later on. And also mixed models appeared to be more apt at making parents feel comfortable in a way, given to the presence of external professional educators or their support in a way. On the other side, the entirely self-organized model requires enhanced trust, more trust from parents, and it seems to flourish more in contexts where the families are featured by some degree of socio-cultural homogeneity. We experienced that in different situations in Venice, historical center, where the families are residing in a gentrified context in a way which make their lifestyles more homogeneous, and they are also partly more privileged than the population in the Venice mainland. And we had the Belgian experience where a good portion of the participating parents were coming from schools with alternative pedagogic models, which also offered this common background, which was facilitating trust. Insurance policies and safety measures are definitely trust enablers and facilitators. Another important element is the gendered component of parents-led childcare, and the, in a way, paradoxes and tensions which go with this. The project was actually an experiment of bringing childcare out of the services realm. It means that on one hand, from our evaluation, it was clear that self-managed and volunteer childcare was really an opportunity for parents to recognize an active role in childcare, to reappropriate reproductive and care work and share it in different ways between men and women. And the quality of this experience was constantly reported as being very, very high, both by children and adults. And you will learn more from the next presentations on this. On the other hand, there was a perception among different stakeholders that practices such as family share might risk to diminish the competencies and resources, the role of the private or public childcare providers already existing in the services realm. But what we learned and what we want to stress, and as a result of our evaluation, is that this risk is actually, it actually doesn't find a grasp in the potential demand wave. At least for the entirely self-managed model, because obviously dual earner couples in particular have limited time to make available for, let's say, self-producing childcare in a, I mean, more than a given threshold. Gender balances, anyway, is requiring a lot of attention and dedicated support in order to happen in this type of practices. All of the partners had to really work on contrasting the so-called trend or to have mothers as mainly participating to the activities. And finally, this led us to have a good representation of fathers, which is definitely higher than the 90% female representation in formal childcare, which everyday children are experiencing. Another important factor which was impacting on all the piloting was related to regulatory challenges. Basically, the access to public spaces, schools, and other public urban commons in all CityLabs required formal procedures to be followed up, and possible solutions were found. Support by NGOs or by public institutions is definitely needed. And it would be good also to have to integrate better family share type of practices within existing services which are already in place and provided by city administrations. Finally, and this is the last point I wanted to touch upon, we also studied the interlinkages between the social and the digital components of innovation. And we understood that the mobile app and the platform were valuable tools for organizing childcare. And as Agostino was mentioning, the results from the tech component of the evaluation were quite positive. The app itself proved to be useful mostly in entirely self-organized groups and in groups which were starting with the family share for the first time. Otherwise, people tend to stick to the planning tools that they already know and use, preferring whatever softwares or communication platforms. To make the family share app suitable to mixed models would actually require further adaptation in terms of designing new functionalities. And finally, we also experienced unexpected usages of the app, spontaneous requests from different stakeholders, cities, and schools, especially to use the app not for shared childcare experiences or co-playing, but other type of functions, such as organizing the pick up and go to school schedules by individual parents in order to avoid crowds in Corona times or other interesting, unexpected use. So these are our main learning that you will understand will be reflected in the presentations from the CityLabs from the partners, and also in the evaluation that our IMEC partners will present. And with this, I would just thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Maria, for this very, very complete presentation. It was extremely useful, and I'm sure we'll come back during the Q&A sessions. But I want to stress in particular what you say about the sort of linkage between the social and digital components, which is really one of the most innovative factors of the of this project, right? So we'll come back on this during the Q&A, I'm sure. I understand that Lucy Stephan is with us now. Would you like to make your presentation now, Lucy? Sorry, you may have digital issues. We all have, and our providers just say, well, I mean, everybody's on the web now, so we can't sort of cope.
Error, actually. The clocks changed in the UK at the weekend and my mind didn't do the calculation, so I was an hour out. I thought I was joining early, but it turns out I've been really late, so I'm really sorry, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here. Yes, I'm going to share my slides now, hopefully, and I'll just talk through these briefly, but I'm really, really keen to learn about everybody else's experiences as well. Firstly, I'll just make a quick apology. I was going to be presenting jointly with Luciana Talpo, who is the nursery manager of Grasshoppers in the Park and has been a source of huge learning for us in all of our work on parent-led childcare. But she is working as a nursery manager, and some issues have come up today, so she's unable to join us. But she's keen to be included in future conversations. So yeah, my name's Lucy Stevens. I work at the New Economics Foundation, which is a think and do tank. We're a charity based in London. And my role there has always been on co-production, and co-production from my perspective is when we're able to join together the skills and expertise of professionals through their learned experience with the lived experience of people with a direct stake and investment in whatever service it is that we're looking at. Our work on co-production has gone on for the last 15 or 16 years, but work on childcare is more recent, some of which stems from a very direct personal experience of mine. I lived in Canada for a year with my daughter, who was 2 turning 3, and was trying to get some flexible childcare whilst continuing to work in a city with no family or friends, no contact, and was lucky enough to become part of a parent co-op in Canada. It turns out they're much more prevalent than they are in the UK. And through that direct experience, I began to understand the value of this combination of parents' lived experience, both in providing the childcare or meeting the needs of people around childcare, but also the much wider benefits that approach to care brought. So we worked as a group of 16 parents, taking it in turns to do shifts alongside paid childcare professionals. But within a month of joining that co-op, I knew 16 families with kids of the same age who lived in the same neighborhood as me, who helped me navigate how to get through minus 16 degrees winter in Canada, which was a new experience for our family, who, for my kind of personal mental health, as much as anything else, being a new person in a city with no social networks, was able to actually sort of take a huge amount of value from that, as well as my kind of direct and indirect learning around childcare. So having been inspired by that personal experience, and with our interest around co-production, NEF has been working on this idea of parent-led childcare for a number of years. Now, can I make my slides move? Hang on. There we go. So yeah, just a bit of very quick background on childcare in the UK. We tend to hold the record in most of the international rankings in terms of the most expensive childcare, especially in the OECD, although we don't do so well in terms of the quality of care. But recent stats show that 40% of lower income families have gone into debt to pay for childcare. Our provision is run as a marketplace rather than a universal service. So 84% of childcare providers are for-profit providers. And what that leads to is an unequal pattern of access. So there's more business, there's a stronger business case to provide childcare in wealthier areas. So parents in under-resourced areas may find it hard to access childcare at all, whilst you've got spare places in wealthier areas. And the business model is very transactional. So parents are customers, and you get to kind of slot into the spaces that are available. But if you have any relationship with the nursery, it tends to be with your child's key worker, but you don't meet other parents at the nursery. There's no sense of the nursery as a hub that connects people beyond the kind of direct relationship between worker and parent. And our childcare workers are on extremely poor paying conditions. The turnover in the sector is about 24%. And research last year by the Department for Education found that at least 1 in 10 aren't even earning the legal minimum wage in terms of the pay of childcare workers. So for us, for me, the reason for getting involved in parent-led childcare was to try to move away from this very broken approach to childcare that we have, to try to build that relationship between parents and childcare professionals, to really focus on high quality childcare, to ensure that we're building an approach to childcare that's affordable and accessible, so that parents themselves have a direct role in talking about when and where childcare needs to be available, what the hours are, what the fees should be, and that it reaches, that it becomes affordable and accessible to all families, but also making sure that we're employing childcare professionals on fair terms and conditions and really valuing the role and the input that they have. So the first thing that we did was to try and understand even if this is legal in England. So all of our childcare provision is registered and inspected by Ofsted, the National Directorate. And we were lucky enough to find that there are some examples that are still parent-led. What it seems to be the case is historically there was much more. There was a really strong movement for parent-led childcare in this country, but with increased levels of regulation and with that growth of a private business approach, the role of parents has been increasingly marginalised. But there are some settings that still maintain this. And Grasshoppers in the Park, where Luciana is the manager, have been a learning partner for us all the way through. And some of the things that we saw from the Grasshoppers experience was that parents were bringing a whole wealth of different skills and experiences into a setting, far more than you would ever be able to pay for, but bringing a real kind of diversity into the setting. And that staff who worked there felt that they had much more power and control and were much more valued in the way in which that they were working. And there tended to be a much lower turnover rate. Staff tended to be in post for much longer periods of time. But one of the challenges that they did face was a sort of middle class capture, that it's a very small nursery. It tends to be heard about through word of mouth. And so parents were telling parents. So a lot of the parents were not necessarily on high incomes, but it was predominantly used by parents who were self-employed and who were looking for the flexibility and the affordability, but it didn't necessarily have the full breadth of a diverse intake that they'd wanted. In the last couple of years, they've moved their physical site into a council-owned building in Hackney, and they are seeing a change, and they've been working very, very hard to increase the diversity of children who are using the setting. But that has been kind of an ongoing challenge. So there's been a slight preconception that parent-led childcare is for those families who are already comfortable and can have additional choices, whereas our approach was very much that this should be something that's a right to all families. So what we've done in Deptford, so Deptford is a borough down in South London. It's a very diverse borough, one of the poorer boroughs in London. We set up a partnership with a social housing provider called Peabody Housing Association. So they provide hundreds of thousands of homes for low-income Londoners, and do kind of annual surveys again and again, trying to understand the experience of people living in their properties. And time again, access to childcare comes up as a major barrier, particularly for mothers, in terms of being able to make choices about how they balance work and care. And those are challenges both around the cost of childcare, where it's located, and the hours in which it's available. So what Peabody said to us is they had a purpose-built nursery building that was empty, and they would rent it to us at very low cost if we would work with them to ensure that any parent-led setting involved tenants and residents of theirs and was available to the wider community. And so what we've been doing down there is initially starting off with sort of purposeful play. We had some time available to support and facilitate sessions, so we set up regular stay and play sessions, but over time those were increasingly led by local families, whether that was the Spanish-speaking mums who wanted to set up a Spanish circle time that everyone could join in and learn new songs from a different language, or the mum who was trying to test out more active stay and play sessions so that parents could learn how to be physically active with their children and keep them up and busy. Those stay and play sessions became really kind of the linchpin of everything else that we did, because that created a really open and welcoming environment in which people could come in and experience the language and ideas of what we were talking about, but really experience it firsthand. We also ran some practical co-design and co-production activities. And so we were working with CoDB, an architectural design company who have an approach to building the physical environment, which is about very much involving people who use that environment in the planning and the construction. So purposeful play sessions where we had different equipment and ideas available and parents involved in that, helping to design what the physical space would look like. We've got a beautiful garden at the nursery, and parents helped to design a mud kitchen and then build it, put it in place so that the children can now use that. And that was both useful as a task that needed doing, but it also was a really significant step in building a sense of ownership and direction over the nursery, as people saw that their ideas could translate into reality and that they felt a kind of a personal attachment and ownership to what was going on the site. We have had a conversation ongoing with parents all the way through, trying to understand kind of what additional things would be useful for parents. That the point of the nursery is not simply a transactional delivery of childcare, but it's also to be a hub of value to parents. So one of the things that came through was training for parents as well. Some people were looking to have opportunity to get back into work if they could make childcare work. So we were able to host training sessions at the nursery where we could provide a creche whilst parents were doing the training, because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to access it. And as that kind of group of parents grew and became more confident from that network of parents, we also recruited some parents who were willing to be parent directors. We registered as a charity. We've then gone on to design staff job descriptions and recruit staff, again with a very kind of involved approach from parents. So staff are required to do sort of direct questions from parents, but also provide an activity where parents are there with their children, and we're able to then test the extent to which the childcare professionals genuinely feel comfortable in working alongside and under the gaze of parents, because for many of the professionals that we've interviewed, that's a very different experience. We've got our Ofsted registration in the last couple of months, and then we've opened to parents, and we're now up and operating, and have been for the last couple of months. In terms of the lessons that we have learned and the things that have been important to us, in our initial research, when we were trying to understand how we might get going with this, one of the things that was very clear was there were two routes in London particularly, but across England generally. Access to appropriate and affordable spaces to provide childcare is really challenging. And at the same time, having a strong network of families is also really important, and a strong demand for childcare. We spent a year or so trying to find a place where those two options would come together, but it was very, very difficult. In the end, with the relationship with Peabody Housing Association, we were able to start in a physical place that was suitable, but because of that, we then needed to invest a lot of time to build a network of families around us. With hindsight, that did take a really long time, but I think part of what was a benefit of doing it in that way was that the parents that we formed relationships with were from a diverse group, and although they might have physically seen one another at kind of other activities in the area or in parks and playgrounds, they didn't necessarily have relationships with one another before. And so by being a more neutral setting, but with a clear set of values, we were able to create relationships that might not otherwise have taken place, where people might have been physically in the same building, but one group of parents who knew one another in one corner and a different group with a different experience of life in a different corner. We were trying very consciously to create a space where everybody came with experiences that were of value, everyone came with ideas, and everyone's voice should be heard. So that was really important. Also, in terms of time, we definitely engaged with a lot more mothers than fathers. When we did some of the practical activities and we did some weekend things like community meals and community build days where people came together with drills and things, and actually constructed parts of the play equipment. There was a little more diversity there, but it was predominantly women that we were working with. And I think now, particularly in this context, seeing the extent to which women have absorbed all of the additional care needs whilst our nurseries have been closed, whilst also juggling all of their other responsibilities, there's an ongoing kind of political challenge around this type of work, that whilst it's very appealing politically that parents are stepping up and doing more, if it becomes those least resourced families that are expected to do this, whilst those families with more income can pay their way out of the problem, then this type of approach will be part of the problem rather than the solution that it could be. In working with the parents that we have done and the way in which parents have engaged, there's a real sense that we've kind of broken down preconceptions between different groups and forged kind of new relationships. But we've had to be very, very conscious about class, race and economic inequalities all of the way through. And at times that's presented very clear barriers for people taking part. For example, with the lockdown, we've not been able to run the face-to-face sessions. And so some parents have had laptops at home and we've been able to have Zoom meetings or ways in which we can kind of keep parents and children playing together. But other families have one phone and very limited amounts of data, plus children who are meant to be doing homeschooling at the same time as younger children. And the juggle and the financial challenges around remaining involved has been very, very difficult for them. And our resources have been relatively limited in maintaining those types of relationships. For us, the other bit around partnerships has been really, really important as well. The partnership with Peabody, which has allowed us to get into the physical space, has been really important. But also we've so far been funded by trusts and foundations through fundraising, because whilst our charity will be financially viable once we've filled our places, at the moment the cost of providing good quality care is more than the income that we're generating from the fees. And so we've needed to have a capital investment and a sort of slow capital that allows us to get up and running whilst we'll become financially sustainable in the longer term. So thinking differently about how this type of work can be resourced and invested in also feels really, really important.
Thank you very much, Lucy. I mean, that was a long presentation, but I mean, very worthwhile as well. There were just, I mean, how many families are involved in your project? I mean, is it just a sort of still a pilot project, or is it, and then how many centers you've got? Only that one in Hackney at the moment, or?
So Grasshoppers has been running for about 15 years and continues to run. Our new setting will be able to take up to 26 children per day. So we'll expect to engage with about 40 to 50 families in total. At the minute, the numbers are growing slowly. But what we're doing is building a toolkit of our experiences. So what are all the materials that we've used? What's the process that we've gone through? Because there's interest from parents in different places to do something similar. So in the longer term, we'd hope to create a network of sites similar to this, but each of those created and designed by the set of families and professionals who are in place in each of those places. So there'll be some common themes, but they'll look and feel different in each place.
Thank you very much. I mean, just a question that you can think about, and we'll come back into the on it in the Q&A. I mean, how do you compare? That's a question from F. Cotonnier. How can you compare your model with the crèche parentale in France? So now we're going back to the family share project, which we've never really left, but still with a, I mean, I'm going to give the floor to Olga Zumani and Karina Beckman from IMEC. IMEC has been in charge of doing the assessment evaluation. So how do you assess the impact of family share? It's quite important because in any social innovation, you'll have sort of stakeholders asking you, but what is the impact? How, I mean, how does it sort of act as compared to sort of having none of these structures? Okay, so
Yes.
please, Olga or Karina?
Yes, I will start. So my name is
Yeah,
Karina.
Karina, welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I will present to you the methodology of assessing the impacts of the Family Share project together with my colleague Olga. For those of you who are not familiar with the impact assessment methodology, in general, it means that you are identifying the future consequences of a new proposed action. In the case of Family Share, it means that we are proposing here a new type of childcare service related with a mobile platform, and that we are assessing and monitoring the outcomes along the way. With an impact assessment, and why we did it for the Family Share project is for 3 particular reasons. In the first place, it's a reflective exercise that you are doing with the project, and you can assess the outcomes throughout the whole project lifetime, or either to a pre and a post assessment. Then you can also see it as a participatory evaluation process. As I said, it can be with your project partners, but also with external stakeholders where you create inclusion. And then last, impact assessment methodology, it also allows you to identify sustainability mechanisms, which can be of interest for the creation of the business model and the formulation of policy requirements at the end of your project. Yes, next slide, please. Yeah, so the impact assessment framework of Family Share, we assess the impact on 3 different levels, and this is referring to the types of stakeholders that we involved. At the macro level, we engaged with policymakers and with city administrators. At the meso level, we talked with CityLab coordinators and with neighborhood associations. And on the micro level, we have, of course, our main users, so the fathers, the mothers, and the children. Our impact assessment framework mostly had a social focus, so the social impact domain was mostly investigated, but we also had some indicators to investigate the economic and the political impacts. Here you can see an overview of the different indicators that we had in the diverse impact domains. I will not talk in depth about this because my colleague Olga will present to you in detail. This is how our impact assessment framework was executed. So we had 5 consecutive phases. In 2019, we started with a literature review, and we looked into the literature of the sharing economy and digital social innovation. And out of it, and also out of the talks that we had with the CityLab coordinators, especially from the experience with Kortrijk, we compiled the first list of indicators. Then we validated this. You will see this in the next slides. We used some ethnography research to do this. And then at the end of 2019, we had the first results. We then updated our methodology, and then the final results became available now in the summer of 2020. Like I said, so our impact assessment methodology was validated with the stakeholders, and we did this in the first phase through creative toolboxes. Then creative toolboxes were distributed among the CityLabs, containing 5 assignments, including 2 mood boards, 1 role play exercise, emotional expression cards, and also a survey. This is how the first assignment looked like. So it was a mood boards for parents to fill in, and where they could express their feelings and emotions as a parent they felt about being part of Family Share. And here you can see that we integrated the diverse impact indicators into this mood board. And if you look to the next slide, you can see the results of the parents. So the main outcomes were that they feel helpful and in solidarity with others, that they find that their children are learning both on social and educative skills, and that they are extending their network and making new contacts and friends. Then there was also an assignment for the children. Of course, they are a very important stakeholder in our project, and there we reflect upon a good method to involve children of different ages, and we thought that a drawing exercise by drawing your own emotion, and also emotional expression cards could help here. And on the next slide, you can see that we actually received a lot of cute drawings. Therefore, I included them here on the slide. And that we did a check-in and a check-out procedure when they went to the activities. So before going to the activity, and for most of them, it was a first-time experience, we see a lot of positive emotions. Most of the children felt happy, excited, but also around 15% didn't know what to expect. But then afterwards, we see that they return in love, they feel crazy and happy to be involved in the co-playing groups. So I now give the floor to Olga, who will present to you the extended results of the survey.
Hello, everyone. So as Karina said, I'm going to continue with the impact assessment results. And given the social innovation character of family share, the social impact assessment is the primary outcome that we are going to present here. So there have been several types of social impact identified in our framework, and each type has been measured with the use of several indicators. The assessment has been done with a variety of research methods. The primary one has been a quantitative survey with users of the family share solution. The survey took place in 2 rounds. The outcomes of that have also been supplemented with the outcomes of individual interviews that were conducted by the Corporate CityLab with the members of the community. We have also obtained additional information from the community managers of all the CityLabs of family share. And the community managers also provided us with information about several interventions and actions they undertook throughout the whole series of pilot activities with the aim of promoting the different impacts. So the first type of social impact that we explored was that of community building. Indeed, users have reported a positive effect on the trust they feel towards other members of their co-play groups. They also expressed positive effects in terms of extending their social network, feeling a sense of community, feeling connected with like-minded parents, but also enjoying being a member of a community that functions with the democratic processes. The community managers have proposed and actually undertaken a series of interventions to promote community building, including making users more involved throughout the activities, utilizing the power of existing social networks, promoting familiarity among users, and also taking advantage of online communication tools. Another type of social impact that we explored was that of community empowerment. In our framework, empowerment has been approached mainly in terms of avoiding power asymmetries. Albeit difficult in the beginning, it was substantially achieved throughout the project, and that thanks to actions undertaken by community managers. Those actions included setting explicit procedures about the functioning of the group, attending and acting upon the behavioral signals of power asymmetries, and also trying to keep users empowered through having them actively involved in decision-making processes and the management of the activities. Gender equality, as you already know, has been a key social impact sought by family share, although it's quite difficult to totally change the norms that surround the distribution of childcare tasks between male and female parents. There have been some positive signs towards a more gender-balanced childcare model, thanks to a set of hands-on recommendations that have been proposed by community managers. Those have included using both male and female role models in the communication activities, trying to actively include male parents, for example, asking them to propose certain activities, and also trying to keep female parents actively involved also in decision-making processes, and making sure that they are not overloaded with the childcare tasks. Family Share has also tried to promote the inclusion of socially disadvantaged and vulnerable groups. Indeed, community managers have reported positive signs towards a more inclusive childcare model. Interventions that were undertaken to ensure that the outcome have been setting concrete goals of the inclusion efforts, collaborating with external local organizations that work on the topic, trying to bring the notion of inclusiveness down to the very concrete level of activities, and also taking into account the separate needs of socially disadvantaged groups per case. Investing and promoting the social capital has also been a type of social impact that families are aimed at achieving. Indeed, users have reported a positive effect of their participation on a set of skills that included both group and activity management skills. They have also reported being assisted by other family members in the organizing of the family share activities, which also points to training other family members in childcare skills. In order to promote the development of social capital, community managers have proposed and implemented a detailed mapping of the needs of users, and also to take into account the context of skills training that is needed, whether that would be online or offline. The final two types of social impact that we explored were those of parent and child well-being. Parents have reported that their participation has enabled them to experience a better balance between work and family obligations. They have experienced less stress around the childcare management. They also perceived family share as an alternative childcare solution that fits quite well with other childcare options, which is something that also led to further reduction of childcare stress. And they have also reported significant time savings from childcare. Now, regarding the well-being of children, according to parents, their participation in the activities within the context of co-play groups has had a positive impact on their social development, as that was measured in terms of collaboration, communication, but also socializing skills. The quality of the relationship between children and parents has also improved thanks to spending more time together and enjoying better activities. And the latter, the variety of activities in which kids have been participating has also enriched the context of upbringing. So overall, family share based on the outcomes of our impact assessment has had a positive social impact. Our framework also enabled the assessment of economic and political impact. A detailed overview of those results can be found in the relevant report. But here, very briefly, we would mention that there has been an observation of significant childcare cost savings for the parents, as well as various ICT-driven innovative solutions that can be expected. At the political domain, the participation of users in the family share project has made them more interested in local childcare policies, and the family share solution itself has been already integrated in local strategies as a good practice example of childcare. A few final notes about the design of an impact assessment methodology to be undertaken for similar projects. We have noticed that it is quite important to carefully select and validate the indicators of impact that one wants to explore, to seek for a balance between efforts, efficiency, and completeness of results. And that's facilitated not only by carefully selecting the indicators, but also carefully selecting the most useful research methods. And regarding the latter, we would propose not to focus only on self-reported assessment with the users of the solution, but also to take into account the perception of other stakeholders and, when available, other data sources as well. So overall, this has been a brief presentation of the impact assessment outcomes. As already said, we focused on the social impact outcomes, and more detailed presentation of the results can be found in the published deliverables of this work task. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Karina first and Olga second. I mean, you were announcing, but I mean, there are sort of in your presentation a lot of elements for the sustainability, which we may discuss in the discussion sessions. Okay. Now I'm going to give the floor. I mean, we sort of into specific projects of the wider project, and I'm going to give the floor to three, more presenters, but we'll have the example of places where the project was led. The first one is Smart Venice, and we'll ask Marcia Sescon and Natasha Sega to actually introduce in 5 minutes the little pitch of the Venice Lab.
Thank you, Agnes. Good afternoon, all. So my name is Marcia Cescon, and together with my colleagues Natasha Sega and Maria San Giuliano, we have been coordinating the CityLabs of Venice throughout the course of the project. So we are going to present you the features and the results of the activities really briefly, conducting in the frame of the Venice City Lab. So concerning the features, we have involved the municipality of Venice as a main local partner from the very beginning of the project. And thanks to this partnership, we managed to conduct a territorial needs assessment involving educators and families of children attending some of the nursery schools of the municipality. Educators and families also participated in a co-creation, co-design workshop in order to co-create the Family Share app. Concerning the organization of the piloting activities themselves, we constituted a dedicated NGO called the Family Share APS in order to be able then to sign agreements with the municipality of Venice for the use of public spaces that it made at our disposal for conducting co-playing activities during the 2 pilot phases. And we also activated an insurance coverage covering both children and parents taking part to the activities for the third-party liability, but also illness and accident that might have occurred during the activities themselves. We organized several meetings before the co-playing activities in order to give the opportunity to parents to get to know each other, for the ones that didn't know each other yet, but also for planning, co-planning and co-organizing the activities before the starting of the activities themselves. Well, actually, I don't know if you can see it, but this slide should show you the areas that we have involved in the activities that we carried out. So we involved families and educators of both the main island of Venice and specifically an area called Canareggio and Giudecca, and also different villages and cities in the mainland still belonging to the municipality of Venice. In each of the different territories, we carried out the needs assessment and the co-playing activities like co-playing weeks during summer especially, but also Christmas. And also we organize some activities during the carnival time that unfortunately were canceled due to the coronavirus outbreak. I'm giving now, okay, now you can see properly the mapping. I'm going now to give the floor to my colleague Natasha, which will explain you briefly more details about the piloting activities.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So from my side, so I will just briefly point out some key features of our piloting activities. So as my colleague Marcia was mentioning, we had a first pilot during summer holidays in 2019 that was conducted in 2 public spaces, being at our disposal from the municipality of Venice, while the second pilot was divided in the pilot had on Christmas holidays, still into public spaces, and in summer. The case of the summer, this last summer, was a bit peculiar due to the post-pandemic situation. And it was possible only thanks to great trust from the side of both parents and the municipality. In this second pilot, we experienced two models. The one was the total self-organization from the side of parents who co-organize the activities themselves and manage them also. While the second one is, we call it a mixed model that foresee the collaboration of two educators together with some volunteering parents who help the educators in conducting activities, preparing lunches, and so on. For these pilot activities, we used the Family Share platform, but only to plan the activities and the shift and enter the availabilities of participating children. So not for creating the group, but just for coordinating it. Of course, as I told you, this was possible thanks to the public spaces available from the municipality and the spaces in outdoor situation. In the last slide, you can see some number of our activities, which show you the increase that we had from the first pilot to the second pilot, both from the side of engaged stakeholder and engaged parents, co-playing or not. From our side, from the Smart Learning CityLab, it is all. I will give the floor now to the Belgian CityLab, to Effie, that will present her case. Thank you.
Thank you
Hello,
very much.
everyone.
Okay, yeah, go on, please.
Sorry, Agnes.
No, thank you, Effie. No, please.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm gonna share with you my story based from Belgium, more specifically Flanders. We are a bit the weird duck in the pool, let's say a typical CityLab, as we were already experimenting since a while with self-organized childcare among parents. So we are an independent social incubator. We have like public living rooms, spaces that started in my own house that offer experimental space, but also space to get in touch, cross-pollinate each other, and bring your own challenges to the floor. And there experiments start in order to try to solve common problems. And one of the first common problems that entered is the lack of childcare institutions in Flanders, and also the feeling, feeling of bringing very small children to very large institutions, but also the fact that childcare is very expensive. And so we had like the safe space physically and mentally due to our methodology of cross-pollination, where parents like myself started taking turns in order to solve the summer. We discovered in June that you should have been subscribing for activities in already February, March. So we were way too late with our little children. After a while, we got invited by the project Family Share, which was a huge opportunity both for us and the project to share experience and also get further on with this solution, who seemed to be a solution for a lot of parents in Flanders, and where we have moved already from our own spaces to community houses and neighborhoods and within school buildings. And actually we saw that networks were turning into communities and that the trust is growing. Yeah, you can give me the next slide, as I'm not really following the text on my slides. So we have about 44 groups all over Flanders. We are based in Kortrijk near the French border, but in 25 cities there are groups. A group starts with 8 to 10 families and grows within the year till 20 to 30 families. As after one period they organized of self-conducted childcare, they realize that all families have different needs and they need enough families per period that they organize in order to cover the agenda. The fact that the technology came in to help organize was a great help. Although we see that groups who are like already 5 years existing, they have their own methodologies and their own ways of working, and they are difficult to change their mindset for the organization. Although a formal way to subscribe yourself into a group, to subscribe yourself into an organized period is really helpful because parents use all kinds of platforms to communicate, and having a centralized and safe place to communicate and leave the data of your children is of course very important. We also ran pilots in companies, and we are really aiming to further develop the model within companies, as we've seen that it gives access to more women to jobs, but as well it's solving the problem at its root cause. As from gender equality, we have seen that in the beginning it were only mothers and female participants, and we see a progress of fathers and getting involved, as we use as well the images of fathers, and in all information sessions we say that fathers are better in playing with children than mothers, that mothers are carers and fathers are players, and that helps. Actually, you can give me the next slide. As I see, I'm gonna pass my 5 minutes. So as for stakeholders, we work with local governments mostly, but also the national family associations. And now we are trying to implement the methodology of family share within their offer, where we can share what we are most experienced in, how to build and foster communities, and these bottom-up dynamics, how they can use them in order to innovate their own organization. We have engaged families. It's not parents, because both, if it's a double family, father, mother, they are involved, but we only have the number of families. So right now we have involved in the second pilot 771 families, and of course the same number of parents, as we sometimes it's 2 parents per family, and so we cannot exactly tell how much parents. Can we go to the next slide? Here we are. So there's very much to tell about it. You're all welcome to contact me later on if you want to share experiences. And now I'm going to pass the story to Carlotta from Bologna, who also has a very inspiring story. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ifje, Carlotta.
Oh, thank you, Agnes. Hello, everybody. I will talk you about the Bologna City Lab. We based our City Lab on the family share motto, "It takes a village to raise a child." So we tried to build the village in order to make it possible to raise a child in a safety network. So our village was built on public institutions and third sector realities, such as NGOs and cooperatives. So we collaborated with many different stakeholders in order to help parents having support in their activities in the mixed model Maria talk about. We worked in 3 main districts, really active in the City Lab, in the city. And with 2 of them signed a pact of collaboration that is a sort of a contract between us as family share managers and the municipality, actually the districts, in order to have spaces, communication tools, channels, and of course the public support in the activities. Then we try to involve as many families and parents as possible through mainly face-to-face meetings, and of course during the lockdown with online meetings. You can change the slide. Thank you. So our piloting activities were mainly concerning the real piloting activities, so the self-organized and self-managed activities. We had one summer camp that lasted 2 weeks last year, so summer 2019, and a preschool week in 2020 at the beginning of September. Then we had many other kind of activities, networking, so afternoon games, breakfast, snacks, to build the trust among families. We had dissemination and communication campaign, a continuous communication campaign, both with corner point, physical corner point, and through social media channels. With the collaboration of NGOs and cooperatives, we had some kind of discount for parents volunteering in some, let's say, traditional activities. So organized activities with some parents volunteering, and these children will have a discount. So we did everything. No, it's okay, you can change. We did everything to support families in every kind of challenges they're facing. Overall, we engage more than 70 stakeholders, different, not only in Bologna, but also in the whole Emilia-Romagna region, and even in other regions of the country. We reached 150 parents only in the second pilot, but actually we have a private Facebook group for parents, family share parents in Bologna and surroundings, and we have more than 200 subscribers. So we reached even more parents than 150, and 38 really active co-playing parents. We reached all the districts of the city, but of course some of them are more active, but the project still seems to be interesting and attractive. So we think it will continue, even thanks to the village we built. So thank you to the NGOs and local cooperatives working on family share and childcare activities.
Thank you very much, Carlotta. Can we give the floor now to Lila?
Of course.
And please, could you make sure you keep to your 5 minutes? We're already over time, so we may have to sort of cut on the break, but we'll see that. I mean, we're listening to you, Lila.
Thank you very much. So, hello everybody. I'm Lila Bolla from Parents House Foundation, the Hungarian partner organization of the project, and we joined the Family Share in last May. Parents House is a social enterprise in the field of childcare and parent support, and we operate community spaces for families and daycare nurseries in Hungary. With Family Share, we explored how such an innovative community-based childcare solution could work in the frame of an NGO. At first, we implemented the project in Győr, which is a big city in Hungary, with the involvement of local families. Then we started to broaden the range of stakeholders and families involved. And we also set up a Family Share team in Budapest. During the last 1.5 years, we organized a number of awareness-raising activities in order to reach as many families and other stakeholders as possible to learn about this innovative childcare solution and about how they could use it in their own fields. During the COVID-19, the Parents' House also switched to online activities. And during this period, we carried out particularly intense work regarding communication. And we also created a so-called digital nursery, where our childcare professionals organized playful and creative activities for children online. We can go to the next slide, thank you. Throughout our pilot activities, we used a so-called mixed model by taking advantage of the existing benefits of our organization. For example, that we could provide a child-friendly physical space for the activities for parents, so that we were able to integrate the Family Share solution into our existing services. In this model, families who participated in the pilot activities always organized co-playing sessions at the locations of Parents' House. There were two major benefits of this solution. First, that parents didn't have to deal with insurance issues, as our organization has a comprehensive liability insurance. So if there had been any accident or damage, which fortunately didn't occur, this issue would have been clarified. The other big advantage is that it was much easier to reach out to families, as we are a well-known organization in Hungary. So parents could get a so-called guarantee for the solution, and they were more motivated to join our activities. At the same time, at least one of our childcare professional was present at every activity, which also facilitated the trust building process among the parents. The first pilot took place in the city of Győr last summer with co-playing afternoons involving just a small circle of families. But after that, the second pilot testing period this summer took place in Győr and also in Budapest in the frame of summer camps and co-playing afternoons. We also used the Family Share application as the main communication tool in our own summer camps. And these camps were run by our childcare professionals, and the parents had the chance to join each activity. Each camp group had its own closed group within the application, so parents could communicate with each other and camp leaders, and they could keep track of what was happening at the camp or share photos of their children and so on. Based on the experience of the pilots, the parents found this solution very useful overall, and we experienced that there is a great need for innovative and affordable childcare. It was also very clear that parents have the same need for company and community as their children, and these activities can greatly reduce the level of isolation. Regarding the numbers, a total of 114 parents participated in some form of pilot activities, and we could engage 40 stakeholders with our activities from public institutions, NGOs, educational organizations, and individual professionals as well. And our overall experience has shown that such models can contribute to achieve work-life balance and to find new communities and to improve the digital skills of the participants. And Family Share is also an appropriate tool to increase the level of solidarity and cooperation, both between parents and between children. And our results also showed that the NGOs have plenty of opportunities through this solution to expand their existing services and their target audience, while they provide great support for families and children. Parents House will continue to make its community spaces available if parents would like to organize childcare activities by themselves in Győr or in Budapest in the frame of Family Share. And we will provide them also with childcare professionals if needed. And their staff will continue to operate an info point or a so-called help desk in these two cities, through which the Family Share solution will be promoted. And we will also be there for public institutions, employers, NGOs, and families to help them find ways to implement and use the benefits of this model. So thank you very much. And I'm giving the floor to the Grace CityLab, to Poppy.
Hello from me. So let's go to see a little bit about, I have to check my camera and excuse me for a moment. Okay. Let's see a little bit about the Thessaloniki experiment, the Thessaloniki CityLab. So we started our activities in the main municipality of Thessaloniki, which is the second bigger city and the second bigger municipality of Greece. And our second place was the municipality of Neapolis Ikes, which is a neighboring municipality of Thessaloniki, where we did our main core of activities. And our last step, but we hope that there we will continue our activities, is the area of Pieria, situated in the southern Thessaloniki, and it's also a neighboring area. We try to involve, and we worked with a lot of local stakeholders in the three places, and also we engage at our activities 9 social cooperatives. The responsible partner in all cases was Ergani Center. Ergani is a center for supporting women participation in social and economic life. And we had a multi-stakeholders model with the active participation of local authorities, local stakeholders, social cooperatives, and also groups of parents. We used all our tools in order to engage them and to participate from the co-design phase till the last steps of the project. And as we saw during our round table last week, we hope that we will continue the activities of the project in the future and we are designing some future projects based on the family share model. I have to say that it was a big challenge to work with so different stakeholders, and it was a challenge as it is not so used to talk at the same level and to be all together in the same table designing and have the same voice. We also use the mixed model as we have some groups of self-organized parents, but also in some of our activities, we used some experts, some educators. Unfortunately, the impact of the pandemic crisis was affects us a lot as we have to change plans, to change places, and after June, we prefer to work in open air activities, most of them in the nature or in parks. No, please, in the previous one. Can we go to the previous? Yes, here. Thank you. Before the lockdown, we organized two groups of parents who worked mainly on afternoon activities. One group they organized afternoon at homes of parents, and the second groups they organized activities in public spaces. During the lockdown, we did only one online activity, but we gave some supportive sessions to parents in order to support them with the problems they faced with their children and about how to socialize in this kind of crisis. After the pandemic crisis, we achieved to organize 5 different groups, all of them organizing open air weekend activities. And some of them was during weekdays. And in half of them, they use experts in order to organize these activities. At the same time, we have 2 self-organized group of parents in totally new areas. One in the eastern part of Thessaloniki and the second in Pieria area. So let's see some numbers. In the first pilot, we have 8 local engaged stakeholders. In the second pilot, we have 29. And I will count some more, as at the round table, we have 2 more new groups of social cooperatives who are very interested, and they will organize some meetings next week. The number of engaged parents in the first pilot were 60, in the second pilot 192. And the co-playing parents in the first pilot 17, then I think it was 11, I'm sorry, 11 families, 17 parents. In the second pilot, 57 parents. I have to tell you that it was a very difficult task, but very, very interesting one. And although we faced a lot of different problems, and mainly the COVID crisis, but we see that the dynamic is going through, as we saw last week that a lot of different positive opinions we hope to lead us to really new activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you very much, Poppy, and thank you for all of you, especially the last speakers, not only for your presentations, which are very clear and interesting, but as well for your commitment and your engagement into these experiments. I mean, that was this is a very, very inspiring sort of session. Anyway, now we've got very little time, but I would suggest, in order to make the best of what we have now, to have a very short sort of discussion. I mean, the most urgent questions to the presenters, and then we have just a 5 minutes pause, if it's all right with you. So amongst the questions we've had, I mean, so far, there was a question for Lucy on the question, the similarity with crèche parentale. I'm not sure I can see any other sort of questions at the moment. But I mean, I'll have a few questions myself. So can you answer, Lucy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not hugely familiar with crèche parentale, but having looked, it looks like there's some similarity. I think one of the bits I didn't pick out very much when we were chatting is we have kind of a spectrum of involvement of parents. There are some parents who are regular classroom volunteers who will be helping within the nursery setting on a weekly basis, and they will get access to training and support and discounts on their fees. Every parent will play a role in the life of the setting. And just also having heard people talk about the numbers engaged, I realised I talked about the numbers in our final sort of nursery setup, but during the stay and plays and the wider involvement, we've had sort of 213 parents taking part, some of them just coming once or twice and others coming, I think that the most frequent was 39 sessions, so quite a range of involvement to that respect as well. If I'm allowed to ask a question just while I've got the speaker on, I just wonder if it's possible to ask about one of our challenges in England is that even informal play between parents has been asked to be registered with Ofsted as soon as anything happens frequently. So as a parent, if I was looking after my friend's child every Friday for a full day, I would be expected after that becomes frequent to declare that as a kind of a formal childcare situation. And I just wonder, that my first instinct is that's quite a barrier to us to really kind of make the most of these informal and the co-parent, the co-play opportunity. So I just wonder if that's something that others have encountered.
I think that I think that we have encountered it in Hungary among our countries, but not in the other CityLabs actually. It looks like really like a barrier. Probably this was the reason why, one of the reasons why it was clear since the very beginning that embedding shared childcare within an NGO which was already providing formal childcare services was the most suitable way, especially in that country.
Maria, can I just add something on that? Yeah. So it depends on what age in Belgium. So for babies, it is not that easy, but for children as from school age, that's 2.5 in Belgium until more. It is called informal childcare, and there's no law applying to informal childcare. That's so as grandparents, for example, take care of their children. And even if it's weekly, it doesn't change anything. Is that the same structure in London, or is all kinds of childcare under
Yeah, I think we have quite a variety, and there is a huge amount of informal care that goes on. And in fact, that's been one of the things with the lockdown that's been very difficult, particularly for key workers who've relied a lot on family and friends, particularly grandparents. And obviously with the lockdown and the dangers of young children and older people, that's been particularly hard. And so we're hearing more and more from key workers who've really struggled then to get the care that they need, because that hidden childcare through family has been so important for them. And the costs now of having to do that in a paid setting are really significant, particularly for lone parents. yeah, there are definitely examples of people doing it informally. It's just that we have also had some cases where people doing it on a regular basis have then faced challenges. And so we've had perceptions from some of the parents that we've been speaking to that they would get in trouble if they did it. And there is like a gray area. And so sometimes it's been quite hard to support what is a lot of people's instincts. And similarly, when we've been trying to set our nursery up, as soon as it's become a regular formal space, we do absolutely need to embrace the Ofsted guidelines. And for some of the families who initially wanted to be more involved, the formality of that has made it more difficult for them to remain involved. So that, you know, that's also been a difficult thing to navigate for us.
Yeah, we had the Minister of Education that explained to us how to keep it informal and call it informal in order to stay out of the law zone. And we explained this to parents, which helps a lot because it's a question that is asked as one of the first questions all the time. So, in your
you say the minister, so it was at the regional level or federal level?
Federal level.
The municipalities.
It was on federal.
So Effie, in case you would, on the opposite, it looks like if you would involve professional educators, in your case, this would make it formal and therefore could become a problem, no? No. Okay.
No, the problem would start if parents pay for the childcare.
Okay. That's
so
good.
They pay a membership fee for the support of their group that is not paying for the childcare. But if they would pay money to each other, then you are in the formal childcare. Thank you. This is a good question to.
But in case, for example, a local authority would invest themselves without asking money to the parents and provide, I don't know, a part-time professional educator to co-playing parents, that would still be informal.
Will be informal.
Okay, good.
Yeah, if the parents don't pay for the child, for the professional.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Any questions from the audience? Well, I've got a few questions, but as I'm going to speak in the next session, I think I'll keep them for now and sort of let you have a sort of 5 minutes pause, 6 minutes, okay, until we take up at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock again, okay?
Okay.
So see you in 5 minutes.
Agnes, are you there?
So how many of us is there?
We are waiting.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So maybe.
Is Agostino with us?
Yes, I am. But I think that.
Wait, sorry, Apostolos. I'm sorry.
Apostolos. No, I haven't seen Apostolos yet.
Agnes, unfortunately, we just got this communication from Basia Madesi, who was expected actually to replace Apostolos, and she had an emergency some really quite serious issues at the personal level, and she cannot join, and she's apologizing. And yeah, I have her slides. Eventually, I could present them, although briefly and with probably less insight than she would do.
Okay, do you want to start with that?
Okay.
And thank you very much for sort of taking it up. I mean, yeah, I think it's important that we get this sustainability scenario and policy recommendations before we start our discussion. Huh?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Maria.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'll try to do my best. So basically, what was done in the project to draft the sustainability scenarios and the policy recommendations for local childcare was relying on the results from the evaluation of the pilots on one side, the impact evaluation from IMEC, and dedicated round tables with stakeholders were organized at each CityLab. So as I understand, these slides here are based on the round tables mostly, while the scenarios are still under preparation and will be included in the final deliverables of the project. So the slides are referring for each CityLab to the outcomes of the roundtables, the policy roundtables on digital social innovation aspects and work-life balance and childcare services, local cohesion, and gender equality. So these 3 dimensions. And all partners were asked to engage regional and national level stakeholders, along with representatives from their city administrations. As I said, the presentation goes CityLab by CityLab, and in Trento, it was definitely specific to the family share at work setting, therefore company-based shared childcare, and Trento made use of the mixed model mostly. The results from these roundtables were stressing the importance to not exclude employees who are not parents themselves, and to figure it out how they could be engaged and contribute. Another recommendation was to use models such as family share as ways to counterbalance the negative impacts of the COVID-19 emergency and its impact on women's employment and increased work-life imbalances. And also to involve gender equality experts in the pilots as a possible recommendation. The social cohesion aspects were stressed as well, in the sense of engaging not only the company and the HR management, but also the wider community, and collaborate with social cooperatives, in particular providing childcare services. It's important to stress that in this CityLab, all the participating employees were under their regular paid working hours when they were delivering childcare in the activities. From Bologna, which used the mixed model, the main recommendation in terms of social cohesion was to start from proposing the family share model into existing groups with similar backgrounds, and then gradually integrate new families. It was also underlined how the inclusion of marginalized groups needs to have an extra, let's say, official supervision, which is in a way resonating to the experience also from the UK partly. The gender equality aspects, obviously. A recommendation was to not to stick to what is normally considered as a female task in terms of childcare, and to provide incentives to fathers, particularly mutual exchange settings for fathers only, where they can also learn from each other in terms of active fatherhood and active engagement in childcare. In Venice, actually, our stakeholders, even in the national policy roundtables, there was quite an interest towards the company-based models, and several stakeholders stressed that company-based nurseries would facilitate the uptake of family share, but also providing parents with some type of babysitting vouchers to complement the model. The childcare services as such, basically one recommendation was to complement summer camp, winter camps, the different type of labs which were experimented with other type of activities such as walking buses to and from school to enhance sustainable mobility at the city level, but also to make family share an opportunity to regenerate public spaces where then the activities can be hosted. So this was a sort of a call to urban regeneration in a way. Implementing partners-led kindergartens and nurseries could also be a way to continue with the family share model in the future, but also with the higher involvement of professional educators. Social cohesion would benefit from linking up with associations, volunteering associations who are working with most vulnerable families. And gender equality in models, in practices such as family share would be facilitated and further promoted if co-playing activities would be seen as opportunities to raise children awareness on gender issues. Once that the parents have the lead on co-playing, and also that more efforts should be placed to involve non-heterosexual families in the pilots. From Kortrijk, where, as you have heard, mostly a self-organized model was piloted, and since, let's say, many years before we started with family share, the policy recommendations focused on creating an inspirational framework, working together with departments of education, youth, and culture in the local, at the local and ministerial levels, and that actually more efforts should be placed into bringing education and childcare together, as childcare can really be facilitating free time of children. Eventually bringing counselors together with volunteering parents. And all these were seen as a means to to further enhance social cohesion. While on work-life balance and childcare services, it was stressed how local authorities need to be partners, but also to provide the right preconditions to co-playing groups of parents, and also that a certain degree of formality has to be reached to diversify groups and in a way balance the homogeneity aspects that were stressed beforehand. So the local authorities as enablers of achieving more diversity in co-playing groups. In Hungary, you have heard the pilot was run by an NGO which is already providing childcare services. And it was stressed that, again, dedicated activities needs to be set up to achieve gender equality, and there is a need for adapting communication style, innovating in communicating to families and to parents as well, but also addressing the family as such and not separately targeting mothers or fathers in communication. Social cohesion was also addressed in the policy recommendations in Hungary, and it was underlined that particular care has to be paid for engaging children and families with children with special needs, which is not to be given for granted actually in terms of accessibility. And this could happen with support from special needs educators. The involvement of parents in the activities as such was highlighted as a mean towards increased social cohesion, because it reduces social isolation, and this is especially valuable for low-income families who cannot afford paid childcare. From Thessaloniki, against mostly mixed models. Similar to other CityLabs, the family share model was considered and perceived as an incentive for the participation of fathers, therefore in a way recommended to local policies. And also a suggestion was made to include the family share model, particularly as a good practice in less central neighborhoods, to support those parents who appear to have difficulties in following the timetables or need special support to bring them children to school or pick them up from school. And again, as the other CityLabs, it was recommended, family share was recommended as an effective tool to increase social inclusion, especially for minority communities. So I hope I managed to give you an overview, and that's it. Eager to listen to our panelist feedbacks. Thank you
very much, Maria. That was extremely useful, and thank you for taking it up without any preparation. I mean, but you know the project so well, and you've sort of integrated, so there was no better person to actually present it than you. As a sort of short introduction to this last session, right, on sort of trying to think about recommendations and sustainability of the project. I'd like to say that we're so familiar in the European Union with the idea that, I mean, every crisis should be taken as an opportunity, right? I mean, the European Union itself has only progressed through crisis. So what can we make of COVID, despite all the sort of hardship that sort of went with it? The family share project and the conclusions are really coming at the right time. First of all, because COVID has shown how childcare was a heavy duty of all the families, even more with sort of disadvantaged families, but of everybody having children sort of staying at home and having to sort of keep them happy and so on, and keep them schooled, etc., has really been an experience for a lot of mothers, but especially fathers as well. People really have widely realized everywhere, I think, that it was a job in itself, probably. I mean, it was really a sort of social activity of a full sort of fledged. So the second thing is that there is a sort of public focus as well on the question of care in general. I mean, it is the question at EU level, but it is as well in all the national governments. And I think this is an opportunity to seize, to sort of drag attention on childcare and on new ways things can be done as well, right? Then at union level, there is as well, even before COVID, last year, there was the adoption of the Work-Life Balance Directive, which is an important, it was insufficient, but it's an important sort of step. Within the next 3 years, all the member states will have to implement it. So it's something which can be used, and the results of the project can certainly be useful to sort of really push some not only national authorities, but as well some local authorities. So it's really the right time to ask, I mean, who are the agents now? And what can we, I mean, what sort of coalitions are going to be able to push these questions of work-life balance in a participatory way, as you have all sort of worked on with a lot of dedication. The first actors, or the sort of ground actors we can think of, are definitely the local level, and in particular cities, right? And I think it was a very good idea to sort of get Bianca Faraggio and Sally Nisho, sorry, you'll pronounce your name later, together from Eurocities and from Urbac, because really it's the place where things are happening, the place where we were reminded when Maria sort of mentioned the question of regulatory difficulties or regulatory obstacles. I mean, how can we do at local level? But then there's also the question of spaces. I mean, you've all met the difficulties with the question of spaces, and there's a lot to do with that. Some things which have not been mentioned, I mean, something which is very positive in the project is that it seems that the element of trust of parents, trust is really very much there. You've all met them. It seems to be very, very clear. But what has not been mentioned, I mean, there's two other T's that are, I mean, I think are important when you think about sort of childcare. It's the question of time, and then the working time with something which have not been addressed at all, but is addressed in other forums which we should connect with. And the question of, I call it transport, but it's more the question of proximity. I mean, all these experiment projects have been sort of done in special places, but how can we sort of really make sure that everybody has got within a range of sort of 1-2 kilometers somewhere where he can or she can sort of, or they sort of ensure that they can leave the child, and the child can be educated, amused, etc. Anyway, this said, I will, in the first sort of round of question, I will ask Sally and Bianca, what are the possibility from what you've heard in the lessons of this family share project? So shall we start with Bianca?
Sure, thank you so much, Agnes, and thank you to the organizers for inviting Eurocities and inviting me to speak and share with you our lessons from your project. I'm trying to share the screen. I've prepared just a couple of ideas. Let me know if you can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I will try to, get there. So I came across this project thanks to being invited to this event, and I read very interesting the reports and also listened to the interventions earlier today. And I was very positively surprised about how practical support this project offers to families in the innovative idea about the time sharing of childcare. Very good social innovation, timely social innovation for so many families. So I will just share a couple of ideas that I think can be transferred to other cities. And I will share why. So we know that in big cities, and Eurocities covers 190 big cities in Europe, capitals and cities above 250,000 inhabitants. So in all our cities, there is a much higher demand for childcare than supply, because of the rapid pace at which cities are growing and the population is growing. And as you said, Agnes, very true, there are parts of cities, neighborhoods that where there's much more demand, so there's less available places in childcare and also the affordability of the childcare is really a problem. The cost is really high in some cities. So I'm very happy that this family share project and the practice, I can see that it could fill the gap to some extent between the demand and supply of childcare, and it could complement the private and public offer. It could do this because of the mixed model, also the self-organized model. Both models are equally valuable, but I see that the mixed model was, yes, tested and piloted, and I could see how this is a promising approach, a promising model. And indeed, I think in all our research in Eurocities, we found that parents nowadays have new kind of schedules, irregular work routines, and they face difficulties in finding childcare to suit their work schedules. So this model, the mixed or the self-organized model, would actually maybe suit better parents and families. So yes, definitely, why not share with other cities and let them also test it. I like how the social and digital elements of the project were brought together, and that the app was tested and used for planning, scheduling, and time sharing. I think it's a very good idea. Of course, other cities might adapt, but still is a good starting point. And finally, but most importantly, I think the fact that the involvement of parents was voluntarily and was found on mutual support, great model. And especially, I would say, for the trust building, the community building, and for the social cohesion element. In most of our cities, there's huge diversity, and there's neighborhoods where there's a lot of immigrants, people that just arrived to the city. They don't know where to start from, and they most definitely need childcare. And this kind of interaction, socialization between families would also lead not only to the time sharing of childcare, but would lead to social cohesion, better understanding and communication between yes, families of different backgrounds. So I can see the added value of the strengthening the social fabric of the communities and the cities. Of course, there's a key role for the safety measures and insurance policies. Everyone wants their children to be safe, and of course, you need to build trust. But I can see that the project delivered on this, so I'm very happy. And also, as I said, allowing flexibility for families who need the childcare. And the key element you mentioned, Agnes, work-life balance, better female employment, very key these days. We come across a lot of times, especially in migrant communities, where women cannot access or take up jobs because of the unaffordable or the lack of childcare options. So this would definitely be one solution. And as I said, the cost, it's much reduced than maybe another childcare solution. So these are elements that I consider very valuable to share with other cities. I've come across other projects, I have to say, where there's new solutions to childcare to fill this void, but none about this time sharing among families. I think this is quite a unique approach, and I'm happy to share with other cities in your city.
Practically, if I may ask, practically, I mean, is Eurocities sort of organizing meetings, or what sort of could you help disseminate the results of the project? Or
yes, I'm happy that you mentioned this, Agnes, because I can share a little bit how we work. So we have a new working group on children just set up this year, and it's more than 50 cities from different 28 countries. So there's 50, but probably more cities to inform. We have very regular meetings nowadays online, of course. We focus on reducing child poverty in cities, and one way is to give them a good start in life, also through early childcare. And that's one key element for us, across other things. And we do a lot of things like mutual learning, data collection, and so on. And definitely our upcoming meeting, for example, just end of November, we could share this, the lessons learned from this project and inform other cities, that other cities maybe ask questions and take the lessons and see for themselves what they can transfer. It's something we do usually. We invite projects. There are other projects done by other cities, piloted different approaches. So we regularly bring this up. It's a bit of mutual learning based on good practices and social innovation pilots. So we can do that. Great, excellent.
Thank you very much. So I have the same question about transferability to Sally. Sally, you're dealing with gender equal cities in URBACT. I've got a question as well. I mean, do you sort of concentrate as well on the use of digital tools to favor gender equality, and maybe in particular work-life balance within the gender equality agenda?
Thanks, Agnès, and thanks everybody. Thanks, Maria, for inviting me to speak today, and really well done for recapping on those policy recommendations without preparing. That was really interesting the whole afternoon. I'm going to, I thought I would share a little bit about what we do on gender equal cities, and then feedback a little bit on how it links to what I've heard from the projects and the cities this afternoon. So I'm just going to share my screen. I'll do this quite briefly because I know time is a little tight today. Okay, so my name's Sally Nishaw. I work with URBACT. I don't know how many people know the URBACT project, but it's part of the European Regional Development Fund. And we co-finance learning networks of cities. So it's a kind of quite a lot of our cities will go on to go to Horizon 2020 funds and do research projects. The URBACT basically focuses on supporting cities to be more integrated and participative in their approach. And we work across all urban challenges. So to answer your question, Agnès, we work on cohesion, mobility, participation, on youth projects. We've got quite a lot of digital projects at the moment where cities are trying to figure out how they embrace the digital ecosystem, how they grow digital businesses, and how they link that to e-governance and the ways in which cities are run better. So we work on all urban challenges basically, but using this approach of being more integrated and participative. We've done some work on gender equality based on the evidence that probably most people on board will know about, the persistence of inequality in relation to the gender pay gap, but also representation, which we haven't talked about much this afternoon, like role models and representation and how important they are in terms of running a city and people understanding what is possible and what our leadership is doing. You can see also from the stats that we collected for a report we did last year, a bit about the economic situation of women in terms of employment and entrepreneurship, but also things like mobility, which connects to something you just said in terms of the way women use public transport to move around a city in a different way to men, sort of gendered perspectives on mobility systems in a city. And we also we do a lot of work on this because we know that local government can make a difference, that it, as you've been talking about, you know, it has a direct consequence on everyday lives, the way that services are structured. The report, I'll put in the chat in a minute a link to our report. We made a report that kind of gave examples and inspirations based on pretty much on the way cities are organized, the way municipalities are organized. And Maria was part of that, putting that report together. And just finally, some principles which I think are really important that have kind of come out this afternoon, but we think are really clear. One was to take an intersectional approach to our work, to make sure that we recognize, we reach out to, we address multiple and overlapping forms of inequality that a lot of girls and women experience. And that we've heard a bit about that, the childcare and families and the young people who are involved in the family share projects, what they're experiencing. And how important it is to meet their needs. that it's important to collaborate with NGOs and researchers, as you have done, the sort of collaborations between local government and community and voluntary organisations, but also to recognise women as experts, families as experts. We are experts in our lives, and bringing that into the sort of designing policy and services. Integrating hard and soft measures, and by that we mean not just thinking about capital infrastructure, but thinking about the networking, and what's come out a lot about social cohesion, what kind of interventions support people to thrive, not just building roads and bridges, and that gender equality benefits everyone. These are the actions that are in our report. I'll put in the chat in a minute, and quite a lot of these actually do relate to family share, I think. I've heard quite a lot of people talking about ways in which, for instance, the communication one, somebody said about how important it was to use images of men and different people in the childcare projects, making sure that you use the city's space and budgets appropriately. So I'll put the links in the chat, and I'll stop sharing my screen and just come on to answering your question a bit more directly. I think, first of all, it's really important that cities learn from each other, which is what's gone on with this project, and we need to disseminate that wider. Urbact is all about cities visiting each other and understanding how things work and transferring good practice between each other. So I'd really endorse the results of Family Share to be shared wider. The role of the city in relation to care generally, and I think, you know, COVID has thrown this into massive, under the spotlight this year, that we see the social infrastructure that cities provide is so important for equality and for cohesion. And when it goes, and we all have to retreat into our homes, it becomes more obvious how much we rely on that infrastructure. I think that's one of the good lessons this year, that there's been more of an awareness from everybody about how much we rely on transport, on childcare, on schools, on all of these things to be good. And it varies across Europe how good or how well organised they are. But I think we've all understood that better, and cities maybe have understood that better too. There's been maybe more appreciation of the roles of carers and caregiving, and the gendered relation, that in relation to gender, sort of the gendered burden of care, which again in COVID has been strong. And something you just mentioned too, Agnes, in COVID, a lot of cities now have recovery plans from COVID, and a lot of those talk about the 15-minute city. And the 15-minute city is one in which, yeah, you don't have to, you can go maximum of 15 minutes to get childcare, to get work, to go to the shops, to go to the doctors. And it's been talked about for a long time in terms of sustainable cities. We should have mixed use neighborhoods. We should have cities where you can access, and Vienna is a great example. Vienna is brilliant at this, where they design neighborhoods where you can access everything. You don't have to travel so far. So I think that's going to become more important, this 15-minute city concept in a post-COVID world. It's actually talked about more now at European level and at city policy level. I think the integration picture is important with this, that we need local government to think across departments, that family share projects need to talk to people who own municipal buildings, who have access to open up spaces. And that doesn't happen so often. You have to break down the silos and get people to talk to not just education and youth services, but who else, the budget holders, the planning people. They all have a role to play in facilitating. Somebody said it once, enabling, you know, cities as enablers of these kind of services. It relies on an integrated approach, which doesn't always happen, and we have to keep pushing for that, I think. And then also, I think this project is about innovation. In lots of ways, and cities find innovation quite difficult often. They're regulatory bodies, how good they are at risk taking. And when I was listening earlier, also the risk taking in relation to children, where there are safeguarding responsibilities and a lot of policy. So I think those conversations need to happen all the time, and pushing local authorities being pushed to innovate, to be prepared to take a few risks sometimes, to listen and work with other sectors to make this happen. So the interface and dynamics between local government and the voluntary sector is always there, and works differently in different settings, but something sometimes cities find quite hard to do. I'll finish after this. One last point really was about gender norms and gender roles, which I think has been sort of integral to this project. And I'm really interested to know why it is in some places fathers got more involved and what made them get more involved. It seems like some incentivization, some messaging, you know, men play and women care. We have to be a little bit careful about all of those things. I think I understand completely, but we need to also have men caring and women playing, and sort of make sure that we don't get stuck in gender norms around that. And also around the neutrality of the play, you know, the play that happens in those settings. How neutral is that? What are the toys like? What's the playground like? And all of those things that set us up for inequalities in later life need to be taken care of. So I'm going to stop there. I thought it was really interesting, and it made me think of lots of things that we do in the URBAC Gender Equal Cities Network. I'll put a reference in the chat for people to join in, and I would suggest that we could bring some of these ideas into the conversations that we're having around gender equality in the URBAC community. We have a particular network on gender, which is led by Umia in Sweden, who do amazing stuff around they call it gendered landscape in their city. Feel free to keep in touch with us, to join our LinkedIn group, and I'm happy to answer any more questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ali, for a very, very interesting input into this conversation. And your report seems to be very, very, I mean, really great. May I ask you a question? Is there any sort of statistics that you would have, or maybe in your report, on what sort of percentage of the needs of childcare are covered per city?
No. We don't have the reach to get that data out. It'd be very interesting data to have, but we didn't. We did more European level data. There's the European Institute for Gender Equality may have some access to that kind of data, but we didn't get that kind of reach.
Yeah, no, I think I mean at local level it's extremely difficult because you get statisticians to actually sort of tell you that they need much more money, they need more nuts, etc. The other question, would you have any indications of existing sort of participatory schemes like the family share experiments that would exist? Even from conferences, or I mean,
we have in our networks, we have quite a lot who work on co-production on different topics. We haven't had one on childcare, but we've had co-production in terms of youth services. We have quite a few on like participatory budgeting, different ways of working in co-production in cities. Don't think we've had one in relation to childcare before, but quite a lot of the principles and a lot of what you talked about is really transferable. You know, some of the success factors apply, I think, across different topics. So I could share some of those perhaps with you, some of the co-production kind of models we've had on mobility, on public space. We have quite a lot on placemaking, involving local communities in redeveloping neighborhoods, in public space, but childcare not yet. Maybe that's for the future. I mean, URBAC will be we have no more calls left in this program period, but there will be calls in future for city networks to come together to learn. So that's a possibility for going forward, to think about that. And also maybe innovative actions as well. There's quite a big budget attached to the European Innovative Actions Programme, where this kind of innovation, I think, would be quite relevant.
Mm-hmm. Maria, would you have any comments at this stage? Do you have any comments or questions?
No, it was the entire, the entire discussion was extremely stimulating, all your feedbacks, and definitely pointing at the need to put care at the center of urban policies, but in a way disrupting the gender stereotypes which are behind the normative models. And for the project, from the project side, I would just maybe stress that all the partners have actively committed to try to continue supporting family share-like activities in many different ways, and therefore there is an availability from all the partners to contribute to whatever, let's say, further transferability efforts that might be considered of interest from in different settings.
Agnes, could I share, because I have an answer to one of your questions, if you don't
yes,
mind.
please.
Yes, so in Eurocities, we've done a study. I wanted to mention it beforehand, but yeah, I didn't have a chance. So with that, we've done last year a survey covering 25 big cities to identify challenges. And this is related to your question on, yeah, where's the need, how much of the need or lacking childcare. So of course, local data that we collect through city administrations are not comparable. That's one problem, as you know. But we identify that this is a really big problem. Childcare places are not distributed equally. As I mentioned, there's a high demand, staff shortages, and all this. But the promising, let's say, trend in most cities is that practices and projects like family share happen more often nowadays than before. Cities are ready to invest, are ready to pilot more social innovations like you tested in this project in order to increase the availability of childcare, make it more flexible, make it more affordable, and even to give special subsidies, especially to encourage social inclusion for vulnerable families that need childcare. I am happy to share this report full of recent evidence directly from cities, but also to share with you that we see a big political commitment coming from mayors and deputy mayors to put childcare and access to childcare high on city agendas. We have a big campaign, and this is related to the European Pillar of Social Rights, where one of the principles is on childcare and right to affordable early childhood education and care. So in our campaign, just one word to say, 17 cities committed to do concrete actions to increase the availability of the number of places in childcare, public or private, or maybe other, like you're saying, participatory models. But also to make it more affordable, like I said, through subsidies. And they commit over 6 billion euros. So these are all municipal funding just to reinforce childcare. These are recent political agreements. This is still ongoing, it's still to be implemented, but happy to share that this is happening. So we see that childcare is becoming really, really a key priority in cities, but also at EU level. As you know, the child guarantee is to be launched in February next year. We work also to bring an urban city dimension into such EU initiatives, also on childcare, but on child poverty, and also on the big EU strategy for children's rights that will also cover childcare. We have a seat in a commission's working group on early childhood education care at EU level. So just to reassure that the city dimension is strong also at EU level, we try to do that. And you also had another question on whether we know of other participatory models of childcare. Recently, just maybe 2 weeks ago, I was in a different event, also of Horizon project with 4 other cities Ghent was leading, and they had a different approach, but also participatory. Just to share with you, the name of the project was SPACE, standing for Providing Access to Childcare for Employment and Employment. And there, the focus was on connecting social, childcare, and employment services together, so that families, or women mostly, looking for employment, they could also be matched with affordable childcare options. And families were also involved in the piloting of the project, and also in rolling it out and so on. So that was a 4-year project. Happy to share the details with you. So there are other cities, and we see there's a different models being experimented at this time. So this shows that we can learn a lot from each other just by disseminating. So yes, happy to share this also through Eurocities and also through Urbact, like was said. And I think that together, yes, it's fundamental that we learn from each other and we keep on testing and innovating with the political commitment that is now in place. I don't know if I'm the only one not hearing you.
Agnes, we cannot hear you.
I think she left the.
No, there she is.
Okay, good.
No, so sorry. I was not leaving. I just made a false sort of move. Anyway, for once it was my fault, not my internet. I would sort of cut on my thinking. In this sort of inclusive city, is there any of the cities that are included in family share? Maybe that should be checked out, because it could be interesting. Because how much is this idea? I know when we've got very bureaucratic sort of projects coming up, I mean, how much participation of parents and I mean, who was saying the knowledge, you're saying the knowledge of sort of parents and mothers and fathers as experts, etc., is taken into account in building up this sort of new childcare facilities. I mean, this would be an interesting issue, and a further sort of development of the family share sort of projects efforts. Ifye was asking earlier a question about within the project, I mean, the request for parents for distance learning, homeschooling. Obviously, it came up even more with the COVID crisis. Has anybody got any sort of knowledge of interesting experiments in this way? And how is it, I mean, how can it connect and how can it complement the efforts of parents?
Well, the fact is that due to the corona situation, the realization came that schools have like two main functions, of course, an educational function and a cognitive function, but also a childcare function. And this was really visible due to the lockdown, the childcare function. And so both from let's say, if we speak in bottom up and top down ways, from the top, we got the question like, would you be available, or would you think about developing like distance learning combined with the family share methodology? And on the other hand, this summer, we did qualitative measurement within all operating groups. And the question was from really a lot of parents was raised, like, how can we start homeschooling with this methodology? So to be concrete now, we are looking for partners, both in with experience in educational innovation and distance learning, to combine and look for solutions in further crises, but as well just the need of homeschooling that emerges in general.
Well, an issue for a new project.
Yeah.
Maybe
Everybody really pick it up. I mean, it could be part, a leg of the project.
If I can share with you, Agnes, and with everyone, in our working with children, we discussed about this, about the impact of homeschooling and what are cities doing to help parents and help childcare providers and so on. So many cities shared that they put in place tools and platforms and yes, for online learning, online play sources or resources for parents to use, but also for childcare providers while they do homeschooling. And many have also, like in Ghent, I know, they've also provided physical boxes with play tools and play resources, so that parents during lockdown have the necessary resources to play with their children. We're talking about really like small children that normally go to early childcare. So some cities have really taken an active role. Some cities have even monitored the use of these online platforms and tools and said that thousands of families were using them during lockdown. And not to mention, to say that there was also put in place online counseling for parents, like free counseling. Yes, to be able to share and get some support on these difficult, of course, moments when work and life balance and homeschooling had all to be balanced. We have a report. I can share the link on all this.
Yeah, thank you very much for this input. If I may, I would like to take it up something that Sally sort of mentioned, and which is this question of leadership. I mean, part of the agenda of Outbreak is really to try and promote more women mayors. 15% is ridiculous. I mean, I come from a country where they were saying, I mean, at some stage, the government, the Prime Minister, Juppé, was saying that, in fact, it will be a gradual sort of progression. Women will start with cities, and then they will gradually progress, and we'll get more and more sort of more and more bigger and bigger proportion of women as we go along, even up to the top positions. But it doesn't seem to be this way at all. And especially at city level, I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. Another opportunity of COVID has been to sort of really put forward the idea that the question of women's leadership was not a completely abstract question. It was not a sexist question either, but it was a very practical question, because it seems that the countries that have been led by women have had far less COVID cases, or have been far sort of better on prevention, and are still far better on numbers. So it is not a complete coincidence, and we need to study it more. But this is certainly something which for the childcare questions, and for having participative type of settings is extremely important. I mean, Jacinda Ardern, but even Angela Merkel, who was not at all feminist, etc., have been much more participatory in their ways to address the questions of health than their male counterparts. So this is another issue which is part of this wide ecosystem in which the question of work-life balance can thrive, right? This said, I mean, we'll almost finish, but before, unless any of you have got any more remarks or important comments, Lucy, I see your, yeah?
I just from our reflection, and I guess it feels like it sort of sits within a lot of what people have talked about as well, the collaborative and the participatory approach has also felt, with a small p, part of a political engagement approach too, that particularly in England, childcare is a personal household issue. And if you can't find childcare, it's because you're not good parents, it's your failing. And there's been something in bringing parents together to share their personal experiences and be part of building something better, which is also about helping them to build their collective power and recognize that these are not individual issues, but something that is more structural. And so whilst it's important that we build better models out of it, I think we also have to really hold on to that kind of political and structural analysis as well. Otherwise, we, again, as women, mostly paper over the gaps that allows then those kind of structural failings to continue. So it's trying to hold both of those balls at the same time, I think. Absolutely. Yeah. And it is something when, I mean, I'm very optimistic when I see the parents' engagement slide that Agostino was showing at the beginning. I mean, parents' engagement in all these different projects has been various, but very, very important. And certainly because there was this sort of snowball effect of they felt more and more empowered. No, it's a very good point.
It was very interesting in our final policy roundtable in Venice when we listened to the representative from the city council, the city administration departments of running childcare services, public childcare services, when they really stated for us the added value of the project was, as a city, the added value of partnering with the project was because of its community building aspects, of course, but we are very happy to observe that in these settings, children have the opportunity to enjoy a 25% share of male carers compared with what we managed to do in our formal settings, where 98% of the personnel is made of women. Although, as I stressed, this result was really achieved thanks to a lot of efforts. It doesn't come spontaneously. If you leave it to the, spontaneous developments, mothers would take it over in most cases. Mm. But cities and intermediate organizations can really play a big role in this, in the way they communicate, in the way they promote the practice, and eventually even by integrating it with specific extra support measures to like the project which Bianca was mentioning, where maybe women participating to this type of parents-led care activities get extra support from public authorities for improving their working conditions, for example.
Absolutely. And this is where it's so important to have people like Bianca and Sally sort of in between the sort of wider sort of European policy and the cities, and gathering together, being a sort of glue between the cities. Anyway, that was a really very interesting session. It has been a very interesting project seen from the outside. I know it's not been without difficulties inside, and I think we should really sort of thank Agostino Cortesi, Maria Sangiuliano, and all the people who've been sort of working on this project, and looking forward to see your final reports and to see how we all can sort of use the results of your important work in our sort of various abilities and capacities. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody.
Could we take a final picture all together with our camera on, please, if you want?
Yes.
And thank you to all of you and Agnes for the brilliant moderation.
Yeah. Sebastian not here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Agnes, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you so much. Goodbye. Good luck.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good luck. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Good luck, everyone.